Beloved in video games, but despised on the front lines, the M9 bayonet has a conflicted history of innovation and failure. Despite serving as the primary cutting tool for an impressive litany of militaries around the globe, it was universally hated by those that carried it into battle. What makes the M9 so iconic, yet so flawed? In May of 1985, an article published in the Armed Forces Journal criticized the military for not supplying their troops with a proper cutting tool. They had been without a standard-issue field knife since the M7 bayonet ended production in 1973. The primitive pig sticker spikes that used to adorn the end of rifles were made obsolete with the advent of automatic firearms. But what was once an important weapon had evolved to serve the role of a tool instead, used for prying, cutting, opening rations, and countless other survival skills. The M7 traced its roots to World War II with the introduction of the M3 trench knife, a design that evolved over time to serve in the Korean War, Vietnam, and what was now the fourth decade of the Cold War. This long lineage of designs gave it the advantage of a time-tested and well-proven history, so finding an adequate successor would not be easy. Rather than get caught up in a decades-long development process, the US military solicited 49 different firms to submit off-the-shelf designs for a new multi-purpose bayonet system, a system that was required to include features such as a wire cutter and bottle opener. 6 prototypes were selected to compete for the contract, but only one knife would pass every test without failure. Mickey Finn ran a deli in California before joining Qual-A-Tec, an engineering firm that specialized in elite weapons design. The career change was unexpected, to say the least, but Finn would become a critical figure in the development of the M9. Much of Qual-A-Tec's work remains classified to this day, but the firm was known in the defense industry for their work on suppressors and bulletproof clipboards. They had already won a number of small military contracts when the bid came out to design the Army's new bayonet. Finn's past knife design work included the Phrobis survival knife prototype, most recognized for its oversized spikes mounted on the handguard to use as a grappling device. It was intended for Navy SEALs, but became popular in the civilian edition Buckmaster 184. The sawtooth spine, Bowie-style clip-point blade, and shiny chrome finish were all heavily inspired by knives from the Rambo film series. But as impractical as this prototype was, it would nonetheless serve as the foundation of Finn's submission to replace the M7. He also borrowed heavily from the Soviets' bayonet design, with its built-in wire cutter and shockproof rubber insulation. Qual-A-Tec studied all of these, the Rambo knife, Buckmaster 184, and Soviet bayonet, to combine elements into their own design. What they came up with was considered the Swiss Army knife of bayonets. Standard features included a 7-inch clip-point blade and Zytel polymer handle. The spine has light serrations intended not for wood, but slicing through the metal skin of a downed aircraft. Even the handguard is packed with features: a hole for the barrel of a firearm, a lanyard ring, and a pair of divots that can be used as a bottle opener. The butt of the knife has a standard bayonet attachment clip, allowing it to be mounted on the end of an M4, M16, or Mossberg 590. The distinctive hole in the blade functions in a system with the sheath to serve as a wire cutter, copied directly from the Soviet design. The sheath is also decked out with a sharpening stone, screwdriver, and magazine storage pouch. Qual-A-Tec named their knife the Phrobis III, and at over $49 each, it was one of the most expensive designs submitted to the Army for consideration. But it was also the only one to pass every test without any failures. Not only did it fulfill all the requirements set by the military, but it also matched their expectation of a design that looked intimidating. Larger, scarier, thicker, more American than the Soviets' bayonet. The sort of one-upmanship that characterized the Cold War was present even here in weapons design. The Army praised the Phrobis III for overwhelming user preference and 0 mission failures, promptly granting Qual-A-Tec the victory and submitting an order for 315,000 knives. As with the Buckmaster 184, manufacture of the new M9 bayonet was first contracted out to Buck, though later picked up by brands like Landk and the Ontario Knife Company. It was issued to Army Rangers and airborne troopers before making its way to all frontline combat units. In fact, the M9 would end up in the hands of not just American soldiers, but was also adopted by the militaries of Australia, India, Poland, and US allies around the world. There were several minor variations in design throughout the life cycle of the M9, though easily the most significant spin-off was the M11 EOD. It was evolved specifically for explosive ordnance disposal teams, and replaced the bayonet attachment with a hardened pommel that could be used for hammering. Unfortunately, the progressive, high-tech nature of the M9 would ultimately be its downfall. By trying to cram the knife with as many features as possible, the design became a jack-of-all-trades, but master of none. One of the most common complaints was the sheer weight. The M9 tips the scales at almost 2 pounds, or about double the weight of the outgoing M7. This was due not only to the glut of multifunctional features, but also the excessive width of the spine, at around 1/4 of an inch. Finn hoped the M9 could serve as an improvised pry bar when needed, but the thickness also made it more difficult to actually cut things. The serrations were also incredibly downgraded, likely as an attempt to skirt Geneva Conventions surrounding the use of saws in combat. While the light serrations were certainly more humane than the aggressive teeth featured on the original Buckmaster, they were almost useless in the field, struggling against the width of the blade to cut even the weakest wood, and rarely given an opportunity to chew on the sheet metal Qual-A-Tec had advertised it for. Internally, the architecture of the design was also somewhat flawed. Most good survival knives feature what's called a full tang, where the unsharpened metal of the blade extends throughout the entire handle, providing the utmost strength and durability. Instead of pursuing this structure, the M9 has a comically short threaded tang that screws into a steel rod. Finn originally intended this to provide a high level of modularity to the design, making it easy for the user to swap out specialized blades and handguards. But this concept ultimately fell to the wayside, leaving many to view the tang system as an Achilles heel. Even the sheath came with its own set of problems. Not only does it have more buckles and snaps than a shoe store, but it also includes a problematic flathead screwdriver. This pointy end became so notorious for stabbing paratroopers in the leg that some later designs were forced to relocate it to the side. Additionally, the Bianchi clip system became outdated with the introduction of mollywebbing in 1997, making it incompatible with most gear from the 21st century. Despite the various drawbacks and numerous complaints, the M9 remained in service for quite some time. The USMC would be the first branch to replace it in 2003, with the Ontario Knife Company 3S, a far simpler design that takes inspiration from the K-bar and is considered by many to be the superior bayonet. Qual-A-Tec went defunct in 1991, taking the Phrobis knife line with it. Mickey Finn, nonetheless satisfied with his contributions to bayonet history, set aside his tactical clipboards and retired from the weapons industry to design high-end golf putters. Today, the M9 has found its place, not in service, but in the forefront of pop culture. The oversized handguard, exaggerated Buckmaster sawback, and distinctive hole give the M9 an instantly recognizable silhouette, helping build its status as an icon in media. The bayonet is perhaps most well known for its appearance in Counter-Strike. It was among the first skins to appear in the game in 2013, and has become so highly prized that they routinely trade for thousands of dollars. Ultimately, the M9's shortcomings were not the fault of Qual-A-Tec or Mickey Finn. They were the consequence of the requirements and restrictions placed in the military's original bid. A knife simply cannot serve as a bayonet wire cutter, saw, pry bar, and bottle opener without losing much of its functionality. But in a way, these failures only add to the aura surrounding the M9. It's a quintessential product of the 1980s, a time of bizarre innovation and impractical design. It may not be the knife I would choose to carry into battle, but the M9 Bayonet is a legend nonetheless. Subscribe to hear more knife stories like this.